Eden stood in the middle of the softly decorated room, her hands tracing the edges of the baby shower invitations stacked neatly on the table. Each one carried the same elegant script, announcing the celebration of her unborn daughter, Isla. Her heart pounded as she hesitated over the last two envelopes, one addressed to her mother, Margaret, and the other to her father, Daniel. She hadn't spoken to them in months, not since their last strained conversation where they barely acknowledged her pregnancy. And yet, a part of her clung to the possibility that this child might bridge the gap between them. With a deep breath, she sealed the envelopes and dropped them in the mailbox, telling herself it was the right thing to do. They were her parents, after all. They deserved the chance to be part of this moment, no matter how much hurt lingered between them. The days leading up to the shower were a mix of excitement and anxiety. Her friends and Kai, ever supportive, reminded her that this was a day to celebrate, not to dwell on the past. But as the event drew closer, Eden found herself checking her phone constantly, waiting for any sign that her parents had received the invitation and acknowledgement, a reluctant acceptance, even a curt refusal. Silence. The morning of the baby shower arrived, bringing with it a whirlwind of decorations, laughter, and warmth. Balloons bobbed gently against the ceiling, and a long table was adorned with gifts wrapped in pastel hues. Eden forced herself to focus on the joy surrounding her, on the people who had shown up, but as the hours passed and the guest list filled in, the two empty seats in the corner of the room remained untouched. Her parents never came. Eden swallowed the familiar sting of disappointment. She had prepared herself for this outcome, yet the reality of it settled in her chest like a weight. They had made their choice just as she would soon make hers. Eden sat on the edge of her bed that night, the glow of the bedside lamp casting soft shadows across the room. The baby shower had been beautiful, filled with laughter, love, and warmth from the people who truly cared about her. Yet, despite everything, an emptiness lingered. Kai moved quietly around the room, stacking the unopened gifts near the crib. He didn't press her for words, didn't ask how she was feeling. He knew. He always knew. Eden reached for her phone, her fingers hovering over the screen. No missed calls, no unread messages, no sign that her parents had even acknowledged the invitation, let alone regretted their absence. She shouldn't be surprised. This wasn't new. Flashes of her childhood flickered through her mind, the times she had longed for their approval, their attention, only to be met with indifference. Every school recital, every accomplishment, every moment that should have mattered, was always overshadowed by their cold distance. And now, the cycle had repeated. Kai finally broke the silence. You don't have to let them ruin this moment for you. Eden let out a breath. She didn't realize she was holding. I know, but knowing didn't make it hurt any less. She glanced toward the nursery, where the crib sat waiting. Soon, Ella would be here, and Eden had promised herself she would be the mother she had never had present, loving, unwavering in her support. But a small part of her still longed for something she knew she could never have, parents who cared enough to show up. As she lay down that night, she made a decision. If they couldn't be there for her in the moments that mattered, then she wouldn't give them the privilege of knowing when she brought her daughter into the world. She wouldn't tell them when she gave birth. The days passed in quiet determination. Eden no longer checked her phone, no longer waited for a message that would never come. Instead, she poured herself into preparing for Isla's arrival, focusing on what truly mattered, the future, not the past. Kai noticed the shift in her. She smiled more, but it never quite reached her eyes. She laughed, but there was an underlying sadness woven into every sound. He didn't push. He simply stood by her side, ready to catch her if she ever fell. One evening, as she sat in the nursery folding tiny onesies, her cousin Audrey called. I just wanted to check in on you, Audrey said, her voice careful, as if she already knew the answer to the question she was about to ask. Did your parents ever respond? Eden hesitated before answering. No, sigh came through the phone. I don't understand them. Neither did Eden. Audrey continued, her voice softer now. You know, they asked me about you the other day. Mom mentioned your shower, and they just avoided the subject, like it didn't even matter. Eden swallowed the familiar lump in her throat. It didn't, not to them. A pause. Then quietly, are you going to tell them when the baby comes? Eden stared at the unfinished mobile hanging above the crib, the tiny stars swaying gently in the dim light. No, she said. I'm not. Audrey didn't argue. She simply sighed again, this time in resignation. I get it. And with that, Eden felt something inside her settle. For years, she had chased after their love, grasping at something that was never truly there. But now, as she sat in the quiet of her daughter's nursery, she realized she wasn't chasing anymore. This was her silent goodbye. The weight of her decision settled into Eden's bones, but she refused to let it consume her. She had spent too much of her life hoping for something that would never come. Now, all that mattered was preparing for Isla's arrival. The final weeks of pregnancy were exhausting. Each step felt heavier, each movement slower. Nights were restless, filled with shifting positions and silent thoughts. But despite it all, there was an undercurrent of excitement. Kai had been her rock, ensuring every detail was taken care of: the hospital bag packed, the car seat installed, the nursery perfected, down to the last blanket. He never questioned her decision to keep her parents in the dark, never suggested she reconsider. Instead, he reminded her of what she already knew. "You deserve peace," he had whispered one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting on her belly, feeling Isla's soft kicks. Peace. A simple word, yet one that had always felt just out of reach. Eden spent her days organizing baby clothes, finalizing doctor's appointments, and mentally preparing herself for the moment everything would change. She should have been nervous, maybe even scared, but mostly, she felt ready. Then one afternoon, as she sat on the couch scrolling through old photos, a message appeared on her screen. Her mother: "I hope you're doing well. I heard from your cousin that the baby is almost here. Congratulations." Eden stared at the words, her pulse steady, her heart unmoved. There was no warmth in the message, no remorse, no acknowledgement of the months of silence, just a hollow sentiment from people who had already chosen to be absent. She locked her phone without replying. They didn't deserve a response. They didn't deserve to know when she brought her daughter into the world, and this time, she wouldn't let herself feel guilty for it. The sharp pain came in the middle of the night, ripping Eden from sleep like a crashing wave against the shore. She gasped, gripping the edge of the mattress as the contraction tightened around her body, fierce and unrelenting. Kai jolted awake beside her. "Is it time?" Eden nodded, breathless, the reality of the moment settling in. Isla was coming. Within minutes they were in the car, the hospital bag already waiting in the back seat. The roads were quiet, the world still asleep, unaware of the life about to enter it. Eden gripped Kai's hand as another contraction rolled through her. She had imagined this moment countless times, envisioned what it would feel like to know her daughter was on the way. But now that it was here, her mind was unexpectedly calm. There was no doubt, no hesitation, only a steady, unwavering certainty. The hospital, nurses moved quickly, guiding her into a room, preparing her for what was to come. The hours stretched, pain coming in waves, her body working relentlessly to bring Isla into the world. Kai never left her side. He whispered reassurances, stroked her hair, held her hand through every contraction. And when the moment finally arrived, when Isla's first cry filled the air, Eden felt something break open inside her, something raw, something indescribable. Tears streamed down her face as they placed her daughter in her arms. Isla was small, perfect, her tiny fingers curling around Eden's thumb. She had never felt love like this. Kai leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to both of their foreheads. "She's here." Eden stared down at her daughter, overwhelmed by the weight of this moment, by the realization that nothing else mattered anymore. Not the past, not the pain, not the people who had failed her. She had everything she needed right here, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that away. The hospital room was quiet now, the chaos of labor replaced by a fragile kind of peace. Eden lay back against the pillows, her body exhausted, but her heart full. In her arms, Isla slept soundly, her tiny chest rising and falling with each soft breath. Kai sat beside them, his fingers gently brushing over Isla's delicate hands. "She's perfect," he murmured, and Eden couldn't help but agree. She had spent so much time imagining this moment, wondering if she would feel ready when it finally arrived. But now, looking at her daughter, she realized something: she wasn't just ready, she was meant for this. A nurse entered the room with a clipboard in hand, offering a kind smile. "Would you like us to notify any family members?" Eden hesitated. Her parents, for a split second, she imagined them here, imagined her mother's hands smoothing Isla's dark hair, her father standing stiffly in the corner, unsure of what to say. But that wasn't reality. Reality was the silence that followed every effort she had made. Reality was the absence that had stretched across her entire life. She met the nurse's gaze and shook her head. No, thank you. The nurse nodded in understanding, making a note on the chart before stepping out. Kai reached for Eden's hand. Are you okay? Eden let out a slow breath. Yeah. And she meant it. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't waiting for something or someone that would never come. Her family was here, in her arms, beside her, and that was enough. The morning light filtered through the hospital blinds, casting a soft glow over Isla's tiny face. Eden watched her daughter sleep, memorizing every delicate feature, the way her lashes fluttered, the warmth of her skin against Eden's fingertips. Kai had stepped out to grab coffee, leaving her alone in the quiet room. For the first time since giving birth, she let herself sink into the stillness, absorbing the weight of everything that had changed in just a few hours. Then her phone vibrated on the nightstand. She hesitated before reaching for it. A missed call. Her mother. A strange numbness settled over her as she stared at the screen. It wasn't excitement, nor was it relief. It was something colder. A realization that this call wasn't one of concern, wasn't one made out of love or regret. It was obligation. Her parents had learned about the birth, probably from Audrey, and now, after months of silence, they had decided this was the moment to reach out. The phone buzzed again, another call. This time, her father. Eden's fingers hovered over the screen before she pressed the button to decline. She had spent years waiting for them to care, waiting for them to choose her. But Isla would never have to know that feeling. She would never wonder if she was enough, never question whether she was loved. Eden placed the phone face down on the table, listening as it buzzed one last time before silence filled the room. Once more, she looked at her daughter, at the tiny life she had just brought into the world, and made herself a promise. She would never beg for love again. The hospital room dimmed as the evening settled in, casting long shadows across the floor. Isla slept peacefully in the bassinet beside Eden's bed, her tiny fingers twitching in dreams. The rhythmic beep of the monitors was the only sound filling the quiet space. Kai sat in the chair by the window, sipping his coffee, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. He had barely left Eden's side, his presence grounding her in a way she hadn't even realized she needed. Eden traced slow circles on the hospital blanket draped over her legs. The calls from her parents lingered in her mind, not with regret, but with finality. She had declined their calls, and the world hadn't ended. The sky hadn't fallen. She had chosen herself. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Audrey peeked inside, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. Can I come in? Eden smiled. Of course. Audrey set the flowers on the table before leaning over to look at Isla. She's so beautiful, Eden. Thank you, Eden whispered, emotion thick in her throat. Audrey hesitated, shifting on her feet. I told them. Eden had expected as much. I know. They wanted me to ask if they could come. Silence stretched between them. Eden glanced at her daughter, so small, so innocent, untouched by the pain of the past. This moment, this life, was hers to protect. She met Audrey's gaze. No. Audrey nodded, understanding in her eyes. Okay. Eden reached for her cousin's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. Thank you for telling me. Audrey returned the squeeze before pulling up a chair. Tell me everything. How are you feeling? Eden exhaled, letting go of the weight pressing on her chest. She had made her choice, and for the first time, it felt like freedom. The ride home felt surreal. Eden sat in the back seat, Isla cradled safely in her arms, while Kai drove, glancing at them through the rearview mirror every few minutes. The world outside moved as if nothing had changed, but inside the car, everything was different. Her daughter was here, their apartment was warm and familiar, but stepping inside with Isla felt like stepping into an entirely new chapter of her life. The nursery, once just a quiet space filled with untouched baby clothes and neatly arranged toys, now held purpose. It was Isla's room, their home. Eden carefully laid her daughter in the crib for the first time, watching as she stretched her tiny limbs before settling into sleep. Kai wrapped an arm around Eden's waist. You okay? She nodded, exhaling softly. It's just real now. He kissed the top of her head. It always was. The rest of the day passed in a blur of diaper changes, feedings, and stolen moments of rest. Every time Isla stirred, Eden was there. Every tiny sound, every flutter of her eyelashes, Eden memorized it all. It wasn't until the sun had fully set that she noticed the message waiting on her phone. Her father. We'd like to visit. No apology. No acknowledgement of the months of silence. Just another expectation, another assumption that she would fold, just as she always had. She stared at the message for a long time before locking her phone and setting it aside. Kai noticed. Still them? Eden nodded. Do you want to talk about it? She looked at her sleeping daughter, at the tiny life she had sworn to protect. Then she looked at Kai, the one person who had never made her question whether she was loved. No, she said, her voice steady. I just want to be here. Kai reached for her hand, lacing his fingers with hers. Then that's exactly what we'll do. Eden smiled, pressing a kiss to his knuckles before turning back to Isla. For once, she wasn't looking back. The days blurred together in a cycle of sleepless nights and soft lullabies. Eden was exhausted, but it was a kind of exhaustion she welcomed, the kind that came with love, with purpose. Isla was growing each day, her tiny hands grasping at Eden's fingers, her eyes slowly learning to focus on the world around her. Each coo, each stretch, each sleepy sigh made Eden's heart ache in ways she never thought possible. But in the quiet moments, when the apartment was still and Kai had drifted off on the couch, the weight of the silence pressed in. Her phone sat untouched on the nightstand. She hadn't replied to her father's message, hadn't acknowledged her parents' sudden interest in her life, and for the first time, she wasn't agonizing over it. She knew their pattern. Their love had always been conditional, their affection fleeting. They wanted to be there now, not because they had changed, but because they felt entitled to this moment. But Eden had spent her whole life bending for them, waiting for scraps of love that never truly belonged to her. Isla deserved better. One night, as Eden rocked Isla in the dim glow of the nursery, she whispered a quiet promise. You'll never have to wonder if you're loved. Her daughter's tiny fingers curled against Eden's chest, as if holding onto her words. This was her family now, and she would never let history repeat itself. The morning light streamed through the curtains as Eden sat at the kitchen table, sipping the coffee Kai had made her. Across from her, he scrolled through his phone, his free hand resting on the baby monitor beside him. Isla's soft breaths came through the speaker, a steady, soothing rhythm. Eden's phone buzzed again. Another message from her father. We don't understand why you're shutting us out. We just want to meet our granddaughter. Her grip on the coffee mug tightened. Kai noticed. Them again? She nodded. They think they're the victims in this. Of course they did. That was the way it had always been. They ignored, they hurt, they neglected, and when Eden finally stopped chasing after their love, they acted as if she was the one in the wrong. She exhaled slowly, setting her cup down. I need to say something. Kai didn't try to stop her. He only nodded, as if he had known this moment was coming. Eden picked up her phone and typed, You chose not to be there for me when I needed you. Now, I am choosing to protect my daughter from the same disappointment. I won't let her grow up questioning whether she is loved. Please respect my decision. She stared at the message for a long moment before pressing send. There, a line in the sand. She didn't expect them to apologize. She didn't expect them to change, but for the first time, she had said what needed to be said, and that was enough. Kai reached across the table, squeezing her hand. I'm proud of you. Eden let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. For the first time in her life, she wasn't waiting for their approval. She had made her choice, and she had no regrets. Eden didn't expect an immediate response. But when her phone remained silent for the entire day, she knew what it meant. Her parents weren't going to fight for her. They never had. Sitting on the couch with Isla resting on her chest, Eden traced small circles on her daughter's back. She had spent her entire life trying to earn a love that should have been unconditional. Now, she saw it for what it was, a battle she was never meant to win. Kai sat beside her, flipping through a book but not really reading. He glanced at her, waiting, knowing she needed to process this in her own time. Finally, she spoke. They're not going to reply. Kai set the book aside. You okay? Eden looked down at Isla, watching her tiny fingers twitch in sleep. I think so. And she was. There was an ache, a familiar wound reopening, but it wasn't as sharp as before. This time, it wasn't breaking her. It was freeing her. Audrey texted later that evening, her words hesitant but supportive. I heard about what happened. I just want you to know you're not alone. I love you. Eden smiled at the screen. She had lost people, but she had also gained something greater: clarity. She knew who truly loved her. She knew who would stand by her, and she knew, without a doubt, that Isla would never have to wonder. For the first time, Eden wasn't chasing love, she was standing still, and love was right here, in her arms. Days passed, each one carrying Eden further from the weight of her past and deeper into the life she was building. The silence from her parents remained, but it no longer felt like a wound, just a closed door she had finally stopped knocking on. Instead, she focused on the love that surrounded her. Audrey visited nearly every day, bringing meals, helping with Isla, filling the apartment with warmth and laughter. She didn't pry about Eden's decision, didn't try to justify their family's absence. She was just there, and that meant everything. One evening, as Audrey rocked Isla in her arms, she smiled. She's going to have so much love in her life. Eden exhaled, nodding. That's all I ever wanted for her. Later that night, as Eden and Kai sat curled up on the couch, Isla sleeping soundly between them, he squeezed her hand. We should celebrate. Eden raised an eyebrow. Celebrate what? Kai smiled. You, us, Isla, our family. Family. The word didn't hurt anymore, because family wasn't just blood. It was the people who showed up, who stayed, who loved. Without conditions, Eden looked around their small apartment, at the man who had stood by her, at the child who had changed everything. For the first time, she didn't feel the absence of the family she lost. She felt the fullness of the one she had created, and that was worth celebrating. One afternoon, as Eden folded tiny onesies in Isla's nursery, she caught sight of an old photo album tucked on the bookshelf. She hadn't opened it in years, hadn't wanted to, but something in her told her it was time. She sat on the floor, carefully flipping through the pages. Faded pictures of her childhood stared back at her, smiles that looked real but felt hollow. In her memory, her mother's arms around her, her father standing stiffly beside them. They had played the part well. To the outside world, they had been the perfect family, but Eden remembered the silence. She remembered birthdays that went unnoticed, achievements that were brushed aside, tears that dried with no comfort. She had spent years telling herself it wasn't that bad, that maybe if she just tried harder, they would love her the way she needed. But love wasn't something that should be earned. Isla stirred in her crib, a soft, sleepy sigh breaking the silence. Eden turned toward her daughter, watching the way her tiny chest rose and fell. So safe, so loved. She closed the album. She wouldn't let history repeat itself. Walking over to Isla, she brushed a gentle hand over her daughter's forehead. You'll never have to fight for my love, she whispered. You'll always know. The weight in her chest lifted, just a little. She had spent so much time grieving what she never had. But now, she had something far greater, the power to give her daughter the love she had always longed for, and that was enough. The air outside was crisp as Eden sat on the balcony, Isla bundled in a soft blanket against her chest. The city hummed below, but up here, everything felt quiet, peaceful. Kai stepped out, handing her a cup of tea before sitting beside her. He didn't say anything at first, just rested his arm along the back of her chair, his presence steady as ever. Eden took a slow sip, feeling the warmth spread through her. Do you ever think about your parents? She asked softly. Kai hesitated, then nodded. Sometimes, but not in the way I used to. She understood. It was strange, how grief worked. She wasn't mourning their absence anymore. She was mourning the love they had never been capable of giving, the love she had spent her whole life chasing. She looked down at Isla, sleeping so peacefully. I don't want her to ever question if she's enough. Kai reached over, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She never will. Eden swallowed the lump in her throat, letting herself believe it. She had spent so long trying to prove she was worthy of love. But love wasn't something to be earned. It was something to be given freely, without conditions, without expectations. And as she held her daughter close, she realized she had broken the cycle. She had chosen love, and that choice had changed everything. A week passed without another message from her parents. No calls, no attempts to push back, just silence. Eden should have felt relief, but all she felt was finality. This was it. The moment she had spent years fearing, the moment she realized they were never going to change. One afternoon, as she rocked Isla to sleep, her phone vibrated on the nightstand. For a brief second, her heart clenched, but when she glanced at the screen, it wasn't her parents. It was Audrey. Hey, just checking in. How are you? Eden exhaled, fingers hovering over the keyboard before she typed back. Good. Really good. And for the first time, she meant it. She looked down at Isla, at the peaceful rise and fall of her tiny chest, and she knew this was all that mattered. Later that night, she made one final decision. She pulled out her old phone, the one still linked to her parents' numbers, and quietly deleted their contacts. No dramatic goodbye, no anger, just closure. Kai walked into the room, watching as she set the phone aside. You okay? Eden smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. Yeah, she said. I really am. She had spent so long waiting for them to love her. Now, she was done waiting, and that was enough. The morning light filtered through the curtains as Eden stretched, feeling a rare sense of calm settle over her. Isla stirred in her bassinet, letting out a soft whimper before settling again. Eden watched her daughter with quiet awe. She was growing so fast, her cheeks fuller, her tiny hands gripping Eden's fingers with more strength each day. She had been so afraid of doing this alone. But she wasn't alone. Kai was in the kitchen, humming to himself as he made coffee. Audrey had texted earlier, asking when she could stop by. The apartment wasn't empty, it was filled with love. A different kind of love than she had grown up with. A love that didn't come with conditions. She reached for her phone, scrolling through old messages she had once agonized over. The unanswered calls, the guilt-laced words from her father, the silence from her mother. None of it had power over her anymore. She had spent so long longing for love that would never come. But now, she realized she had everything she needed. She had Isla. She had Kai. She had Audrey. She had built a family, not from obligation, but from love. And for the first time, she wasn't looking back. The sun was setting as Eden sat on the couch, Isla curled up against her chest, her tiny breaths warm against Eden's skin. The soft hum of the city filtered through the open window. But inside, everything was peaceful. Kai sat beside her, his arm draped over the back of the couch. He glanced down at Isla and smiled. She's perfect, you know. Eden let out a quiet laugh. I know. For so long, she had carried the weight of her past, the wounds of a love that had never been enough. But sitting here, holding her daughter, feeling Kai's warmth beside her, she knew the truth. She wasn't broken. She had never been the problem. She pressed a gentle kiss to Isla's forehead, breathing in the sweet scent of her newborn skin. This was love. Unwavering, unconditional. She had spent years searching for something she had the power to create all along, and now, she was free. Kai reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. You happy? Eden exhaled, feeling the last of her doubts fade away. Yeah, she whispered, squeezing his hand. I really am. And for the first time. It wasn't just something she said. It was the truth.